Thank you for joining us from around the world. Welcome to Global AI Community on Tour, and we are getting ready to speak with Anupama and Natarajan. And this is our final session of the day. So if you've been with us throughout the entire 30 hours, then thank you and congratulations. We all made it. If you have any questions during this session, then please feel free to post them in chat.globalai.community. So Anu is a data and analytics and AI consultant with 20 plus years of experience working in design and development of data warehouse, business intelligence, AI-enabled applications, and SaaS integrated solutions. Anu is a Microsoft AI MVP, a Microsoft certified trainer, and really passionate in sharing knowledge. She loves solving complex business problems with innovative solutions using technologies and speaks at many conferences around the world, including the PASS Summit, SQL Saturdays, Data Platform Summit, and the Definity Conference, as well as organizing local user group meetups. So I can't think of a better way to end the conference than with you, Anu, and thank you so much for joining us. And I'm really excited to be sitting through your session.
Great. Thanks, Alicia. And I think, first of all, welcome everyone and for the Global AI Virtual Tour. And this is the last session, as Alicia mentioned. And first of all, thanks to the organizers. I think organizing 30 sessions, that too on a virtual platform, is not easy. And thanks for doing it at this moment, because I think a lot of us, like, we are just getting used to how do we organize online sessions, given we can't organize our local meetups and things. But yeah, pretty much I'm so happy to present at this virtual tour. So without any further delay, let me straight away get into the final session of the Global AI Virtual Tour, which is custom models using Azure Forms Recognizer, which is part of the cognitive service stack. A little bit about myself before we get into today's session. So I'm Anupama Natarajan. So I'm a data and AI consultant, 20 plus years of experience, Microsoft MVP for AI, and also I'm a certified Microsoft certified trainer and a speaker at various events. And also I do organize a lot of events in Wellington, New Zealand, mainly around the global AI boot camps, the local SQL Saturday events, and also the local user group events. So if you have any questions or anything that you want to discuss with me post this session, feel free to reach out to me through any of my social channels there. So I've got my LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as my email and my blogs over there. Cool. So first of all, I need to just give you a good introduction about the Azure Cognitive Services, and we are going to drill down into the forms recognition service as part of today's session. See, the Azure Cognitive Services is nothing but a set of APIs which Microsoft have provided. So rather than thinking about how do I enable AI in my applications, a lot of organizations are thinking, okay, I have to start with a greenfield project. So where I have to look for opportunities, how I can bring in AI. But that's not the case. So what you can always think about is like, how can you make your existing applications AI enabled, because that's a way of thinking, because you don't need to start anything with the greenfield. You can take an existing application and look at opportunities where you can add value for your business customers, and you can make an existing application quite easily AI enabled by simple things like infusing the Azure Cognitive Services into your applications. So the cognitive services stack comes up with a whole heap of APIs that you can integrate with your existing applications or even with new applications. So under the vision category, you have a set of APIs that you can integrate. And similarly, like you have your speech category, you have your language category, you have your decision category, and finally like your web search, like we can integrate your Bing search with any of your applications to make your applications more search enabled also. So as you can see here, like there is a whole heap of APIs that you can integrate, and each of these APIs are really well documented by Microsoft, and they expose a lot of endpoints that you can easily integrate with your existing applications. So what we are going to go and drill down today is about looking at Forms Recognizer service. So what is Forms Recognizer service and what Microsoft have provided us in terms of the APIs that we can integrate with Forms Recognizer and what actually it adds as a value for your business users. So those are the key things that we will be looking at part of today's session. So I'm really, what do you say, excited that when I talk about Forms Recognizer service. The reason for that is like I've been working in IT industry for past 20 years, and I have worked in a lot of software development applications early in my career. And most of the times, what I have noticed is like lot of organizations used a lot of paper-based forms. So these forms, like people fill in the forms, they scan it, and then it comes to be keyed into the applications within the organization. And a lot of time has been spent in terms of keying these applications, the paper-based forms into your existing applications, and they are not well integrated also because as you can see, there will be a lag because you're not totally integrating your forms with your backend applications. A lot of organizations moved with digital platforms where they said provide you like the self-service capability. You can jump onto a website, fill in an online form, but a lot of people don't know what happens behind the scenes, which I have seen personally in my experiences. Behind the scenes, it is still a lot of manual, like based operations that gets carried out, and that's why like the front end may look digital, but behind the back office side, it's still manual. So what Forms Recognizer allows you to do is Microsoft have infused the machine learning technology with the service so that it can easily identify and extract data out of the forms. So which is pretty much was the automation that was missing earlier. I think we had technologies like OCR and stuff at that point, but still it wasn't well integrated. But with Forms Recognizer, we have the capability now to just take an existing form, put it into the Forms Recognizer service, and give sample forms in order to train it so that it can easily identify the different data elements and the structure of your form. And finally, it will allow you to extract the key and value pairs, which along with any other cognitive service, it also provides you a confidence level. Based on the confidence level, then you can take it through like whether you want to fully automate it or you want to just have a manual viewer or someone to just validate the data before it gets integrated with your backend applications. So in a nutshell, how does the Forms Recognizer service works is basically you have a whole heap of series of forms. So here the forms can be like there are any type of formats of forms that you can use, and you will be training these forms. Like you take a sample of 5 or 6 forms, and then you can just put it through the Forms Recognizer service. It is going to build you a model, and then pretty much based on that model you can just test the other forms that you have got, which will automatically detect the values out of your forms. So it may sound so easy as I said, oh, okay, how is it going to happen behind the scenes? I think the Forms Recognizer service does all the work for you. And with the machine learning capabilities, as I mentioned, which Forms Recognizer is using, like there is a set of capabilities like supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. I think Forms Recognizer service supports both the flavors. When it comes to supervised machine learning, basically you will be labeling the different elements within your form, and then the machine learning capability is going to just use the labels in order to identify and extract the data. While in unsupervised machine learning, what it does is like it automatically is going to identify the key and value pairs without the need of any labels being provided by yourself. So we are going to look at both the flavors of how do we use the Forms Recognizer service with labels as well as without labels. So the Forms Recognizer service currently provides 3 different services. One is creating your custom models. So custom models are basically like you can just train a model based on a predefined set of forms. And once the model is trained, then you can put through that model with the forms that you want to test, which is pretty much is going to extract the key and value pairs. The custom models again comes with 2 flavors, which is around the, as I said, the supervised and unsupervised machine learning capability. So we are going to look at both supervised as well as unsupervised, where one, we are going to look at without providing any labeling on the form, how do we able to extract the data? And the other one is like we will be doing some sort of labeling using a tool that has Microsoft has provided, which you can use and label your forms, and how the Forms Recognizer service will be using it in order to detect the key and value pairs out of those forms. And of course, we also have the pre-built receipt model. The pre-built receipt model is currently supported only for the US-based receipts. And the key thing I want to emphasize here is the Forms Recognizer service is currently available only in preview. So whatever I'm going to demonstrate today is currently it is working based on the preview version of the APIs. But keep an eye on those APIs because sometimes new features gets added before they turn into GA. And okay, so the pre-built receipt model, just reiterating back, it supports only for the US-based receipts. I tried some from a receipts which I got from New Zealand, and it was able to detect, but I think from a region perspective, it couldn't recognize the text and information correctly. So it was able to recognize a few areas, but not the complete receipt as such. But I think they are currently training a lot of US-based receipts as part of this model. And finally, the layout.api, which is pretty much will be embedded and used as part of our the labeling process, where we will be just showing like, okay, how does the table is structured in our forms, and where does the columns are actually laid out in the forms. So as part of the labeling process, we will be also doing it using the layout API. So what we will be shortly looking at is drilling down into custom models, and how can we use the custom models in order to extract data both from with labeling as well as without labeling. Great. So with as any other Azure services, the first thing everyone's mind goes into is what is the pricing associated. So with Forms Recognizer, and currently, as I mentioned, it is the whatever you're seeing on the slides is basically a preview pricing. So you have a free instance that you can use, which is around 0 to 500 pages free per month, and you have a S0 container that is available. Again, that is around, I have just provided here the New Zealand dollars. So from a New Zealand dollar perspective, it's $37, 7.99 per 1,000 pages. So that's something to keep in mind, especially when it comes to the Forms Recognizer pricing. So if you're whether you're using the custom document type, where I said talked about labeling or non-labeling options, or you're going to go with the pre-built options, which is your layout API or receipt-based model, the prices differed based on whatever you're using there. Cool. I think without any further delay, let us quickly look at like how do we create our custom models, where we are going to create a model without creating any labels or anything. So we are going to just feed in a set of forms and get the model, create a model that gets trained based on the forms that we are feeding in. And then finally, we are going to just provide some sort of test data to use with that model, and we can see whether it is able to detect and extract the information that we are looking for. So let me quickly just jump here. Great. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is I'll just start with my Azure portal here. So I have created a resource group called Global AI Virtual Tour. So I have got two services which I have provisioned. So one is a blob storage. So the blob storage is mainly to hold my test and the training documents, so that I can put it in those containers, so I can point it out to my Forms Recognizer service where to go and look for the testing and training documents. And then I have got a Forms Recognizer cognitive service, which I have provisioned. So if you're interested in provisioning a new Forms Recognizer service, you can go and search for in the marketplace like a Forms Recognizer, which is currently in preview. So you can hit on create, and a few of the details is you provide what is the Forms Recognizer name that you want to give, as well as your subscription, the location, the pricing details. As I mentioned, you have two options here you can choose. One is actually Let me choose here Australia East, and I'll provide a name, just Forms Reg. So as you can see here, I have already used up one of my free subscription, but you can use a standard one if you need to, and then probably the resource group. And one thing to just understand is you're actually accepting for the terms and conditions, because you are going to upload your sample forms for training purposes. Just keep that in mind, especially if your organization is worried about privacy related things. But that is something to keep in mind before you provision the service. So once you have successfully provisioned the service, you would be getting a forms recognizer service, as you see here. Like any other cognitive service, the key things that you need is your key as well as your endpoint, because these are the two things that we will be using in order to train our models as well as to test our models. So what it allows you to do is you can use a set of REST APIs that comes with the forms recognizer service in order to train your models. Or what you can also do is you have the SDK option. So you have a forms recognizer SDK that is available, which you can integrate with your existing applications that if you want to go down that route. So what I'm going to show you is using the REST API that is already available, and I have going to use my Postman tool. So because I don't need to go here and cut code. So rather than, I'll just quickly show you like how can you just use Postman in order to just create a model that you can train your documents with, and as well as how can you easily test your model also with the REST API calls. So let us start with the forms recognizer. I have got like 4 requests that I have created here. So the first one is I want to just train my custom model. In order to do that, I need to issue a post request to the URL, which is my cognitive services URL for my forms recognizer. So this is actually the endpoint that I'll be hitting. So for this particular endpoint, there are a few things that I have to provide as parameters. One is I have to provide my headers, which is the content type which I'm going to pass in the body is going to be application JSON. And the subscription key is nothing but the forms recognizer key, which you can easily pick it from Azure portal. So let me get it back here. So the key which I'm talking about here is this. Cool. So let me get back here. So once you have provided this, the next thing you have to provide is, in order to train your models, you need to show the forms recognizer service where the documents are located for the training. So that's one of the reason I have got a storage account created in my resource group. So here inside my storage account, I have got few containers that I have created. So one of the container is the forms recognizer training for Postman and a testing for Postman. So I have uploaded a few invoices here. So these are some of the invoices that I'm going to use for training purposes. So if you want to quickly look at how does that invoice look, here is just a sample. So this is just a sample invoice that we are going to use. And what I have got is like 5 different sample invoices that are available in this blob container. And we will be going to pass this blob container as an input to our cognitive services REST API. So if I get back here, and that's what pretty much I have said. So this is my SAS URL for my blob container, which has got all my testing, like the training forms that I want to train. So here you can see my container name. And finally, I'm also specifically mentioning all the training forms will have a prefix of invoice underscore. So I have just got it as invoice underscore 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if your container has got more number of documents and you want to just pick only the documents of a certain prefix, you can provide that here. As well as like if you want to include subfolders, you can go ahead and include that also. Because if you don't want to just have it at a root level, like if you want to go for nested options, you can do that. And using the label file or not, I will just explain you in the next part of the demo, because we will be creating some labels as part of the like what do you say, supervised machine learning option. So during that time, we will be creating some labels, and we will be enabling it as part of that. But because I'm going to use this for unsupervised, I'm just setting it as false. So that's pretty much what you have to configure. So my URL, my the endpoint here, the post is the method I'm going to call. My headers have been set. My body has been provided in terms of where to find the files, and I'll hit on send. So this is going to go and send the request. And as you can see, so what I'm going to, sorry, I'll just quickly show you the output here. So it has got a status of 201. So 201 created is basically what it says is like it has actually created or submitted the request successfully. So now what you need to do is you may need to do a callback. So this is the URL. What it says is you have submitted the request. Periodically go and check this URL and you may get the output of your model. So what I'm going to go here and do is copy this particular URL location, and then I'm going to issue another get based on the URL that I copied from there. So I submitted a training model request. So now I'm going to go and retrieve to see whether the model has been successfully created. So this is just again going to be a get request, and this is a different endpoint as you can see here. So this is custom models, and this is the model ID that you got it created as part of your submission process. So now I just took the entire URL, issued a get command, as well as I just passed on my content type and my API key here for my Forms Recognizer service, and then hit on send. So now this has gone and it has got, and now it has pulled through saying my model has been created. And these are the documents that has been scanned from my container, and the status of that has come as succeeded. So what it clearly shows is now the model has been created successfully based on the documents that I have provided for training purposes. Now, once that is done, the next step is how do we use this model in order to do the testing of your forms. So I have got two more forms which I have got from a testing perspective. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go and say like I want to do a analyze of the forms so that I can see like, okay, if I go and use this particular model, and if I want to just pass some of my test invoices here, and I want to just analyze and see whether the model is going to give me the output I'm looking for. So quite easily what I can do is I just call this particular endpoint. Again, all these endpoints which I'm talking here is all part of your Azure Cognitive Services like Forms Recognizer API endpoints. So here the train custom model, this is the endpoint I was talking about the first when you want to train a model. And similarly, like if you want to just analyze the form, then you can go ahead and create this. Or if you want to get your custom model, you can use this endpoint. So these are the endpoints pretty much I'm just showing you in Postman, how I'm invoking them as well as retrieving it. So what I have got here is this is my invoice 6. So up to I just gave 5 invoices for training purposes. Now I'm going to test it using my invoice 6, and I'm going to just go ahead and submit here. So let me quickly copy this model because this is my new model ID which I have created. So let me replace that so that it always uses the latest model, and I'll hit on send. So once this request is sent and it is submitted, again it is going to say like, okay, the request has been successfully accepted. The reason you are seeing like why am I not seeing the output straight away? Sometimes like they have to go in a queue, and you may, instead of you waiting for it, so it happens asynchronously. So you get a request and saying like your request has been accepted, and you periodically go and query for your response, and once the response is ready it will be served to you. And that's what is happening in those API calls here. So as you can see here, it has now said, okay, your request has been successfully accepted. Now I can take this particular URL which I got as a response, and I can go and see like, okay, now you go ahead and give me the output based on what you found with my invoice 6. So now if I look at the body, so as you can see here, it has extracted the information based on my invoice 6. So it has got the text of the invoice number as well as the invoice date as well as the invoice due date, and all the information now is now available for me as a JSON. So the key thing to understand here is here I haven't mentioned anything in terms of like where do you go and look for the invoice number or the invoice date or anything. So I used those 5 invoice forms as a training set of forms, and the forms recognizer service automatically has identified the key and value pairs in those invoices. And when I submitted the test forms, it used the identifiers that it could already found in that test in the training forms that I have provided, and it extracted the text based on that. So this is one of a key example like how the unsupervised machine learning really works. And this really works for if you have consistent forms that you can just upload for training purposes. So this is the first part of the demo. So what I would suggest is if your organization has got a lot of forms or paper-based forms that they are dealing with, and if you want to extract text out of that, then probably you can go down this model and start using the forms recognizer service in order to train your forms. Just to give 5 different sample forms. There will be a question also like, do I need to give a filled in form or a blank form? I would say give a combination of both. Just give one filled in, multiple filled in forms and one blank form, so that the machine learning capability can easily recognize the layout of your forms, as well as like where the values are actually getting input in those forms. So that's our first part of the demo. So quickly we were able to just invoke these APIs, and we were able to just extract the text out of the forms in a JSON format. So this is the API way of doing it. Again, you can use the SDKs, and you can use even Python in order to invoke the forms recognizer service and extract the data out of these forms in a JSON format and use in your applications. And this is quite interesting because there is a lot of potential for a lot of organizations in order to automate their back office operations. And as I mentioned before, I have seen a lot of organizations still their back office operations are manual. So I would suggest like if you have a lot of forms in your organization, start trying with the preview mode itself, because even with the preview mode, you have a lot of opportunities to try and test your forms to see like how much it is getting detected. And what I have noticed personally is if they are simple layout forms, quite easily the recognition service is picking it up the value smartly. But when you have complex or nested table structure or something in your forms, that's where you have to just go down to the labeling model rather than using the unsupervised machine learning. So let us quickly look at how do we do the second part of our demo, which is how do I go about and add labels to my forms, and how do I just go ahead and extract or train the model as well as extract the data out of that model. So before I get into that side of the demo, let me quickly show you whether it got generated. So these are the two PDF files which I had from a testing perspective. I had in my container. So this is my forms recognizer test Postman, and then I have got the training files were available in here. So now what we are going to do is I'm going to use another set of containers which I created. The main reason for that is these containers are going to be using the supervised machine learning capability. And in order to do that, first thing is you need a tool in order to label your forms, because you have to just say like, okay, where is the invoice number located in my form? Where is the invoice date located in my form? So all these needs to be provided with some labels, and these labels will be used in order to identify where the particular element is appearing in the form, and it will be extracted. So to do that, Microsoft have already provided a form labeling tool. So this is a OCR form labeling tool, and this is like available on GitHub if you're really interested. So here is the URL, and all these URLs are actually available in the references section of my slide. So the OCR form labeling tool, what it allows you to do is basically you can take a form, import it in there, and automatically like you can just label the different elements in the form, and then you can train your models. So in order to do that, first thing what you need to do is you have to, there are some prerequisites that you have to follow. So let me jump on to my slide here just to quickly show you the prerequisites. So one of the prerequisite I wanted to show was like having a Docker desktop. So I'm currently running a Docker desktop on my machine here. So what it allows me to do is it will allow me to pull down the label tool image onto my local machine here, and then I can run that on port 8080. And that's what I have done. And this is the set of commands that I ran in order to do that. So you install Docker desktop, and you pull the label tool image from the Microsoft .com image repository, and then you do the Docker run. And currently I'm just running it on port 8080. And if I jump back to my tool here, as you can see, my the OCR tool is running actually on the port 8080 of my local host. So first thing what we need to do is we need to establish the connection to our document storage. So we have got a blob storage already available. So what I have to do is to establish a connection to my blob storage. So you can go ahead and create a new connection, and you can provide a name, which I have provided like a blob storage demo 13. And then you have to generate or copy the SAS URI from your blob storage to here. And where do you find the SAS URI is if you jump onto your blob storage, you can go here and look for shared access signature. So when I say SAS, it's shared access signature. And here you can go ahead and set like how long you want this URI to be active for. So I have just said like, okay, up to 30th of this month, then generate the SAS URI. So now you have got the URIs for your blob or the different other services that are available in your storage account. So here I just copied my blob service SAS URL. And one thing to note down here is, so this is the URL I have copied, but what I need to also include is this is a generic one, which means pretty much it have access to all my containers. But if I want to just specifically say like, okay, my training documents are located in this container, I need to just append the forms recognizer train container name here. So in the URL. So that's what I have to do in order to just mark it to point to a particular container in my blob storage. So once I have done that, I can copy the SAS URL and get back to my forms recognizer here, paste it, and then I have to hit on save connection. So what this will allow me to do is this is actually establishing the connection to my blob storage. And that's what I have already done here. So here I have got a blob storage demo 13 and I have provided my SAS URI. One more thing you have to do from a storage account perspective is to enable the cross-domain resource sharing. Because what you're going to do is you're going to access your blob storage from this particular application. So you need to make sure like you are enabling that. And again, there is a link available on how do you go about enable that, which is on the Azure documentation. And where do you go about and enable that is again in your storage account in course, where I have just enabled all the related to my blob service. I have enabled the course here. So again, the documentation will help you how to do that, but this is something you have to do. Otherwise, like you will have problems in order to extract the documents for training purposes. Great. So once you establish your storage connection, now you can go ahead and create a new project. So you can provide a name for your project saying Forms Recognizer Demo. And then I can create a new security token so that my project files are actually encrypted. I can choose my blob storage here. And if you have a folder path, you can provide here, but already my connection string includes the folder path, which is the container that I want to look into. And the Forms Recognizer service URI. As I said, like with Forms Recognizer, the two key parts that you require is your URI and your access key. So I'll copy the URI here, get back here and paste it. And then your API key, which is again available here, and you can paste that here. So once this is provided, you can provide a description if you need to, and finally you can just save the project. Cool. So what it automatically does is like it is going to go ahead and create a project for you. So I have got two projects here. One is the Forms Recognizer demo, which I created. The other one is the one which I have pre-trained and kept it. So what you're seeing here is this is a pre-trained one, which I have really kept it. So I'll just quickly jump on to that Recognizer demo here. So what forms this labeling tool allows you to do is you can go ahead and create new labels by clicking on adding a new tag. And you can say like, for instance, I have to add VAT ID now in order for this to be recognized. So I have added a new tag here. So here I have got an invoice number, invoice date. These are the different tags I added already. And I have added a new tag called VAT ID. And now I can go in the form and say, okay, if I select this text and if I select VAT ID, basically this part of the text is actually the VAT ID. So this is how I can go ahead and start creating labels on and then map my form to those labels that I have already created. So this is, I would call it as a labeling process. And here, because once you establish the connection to the blob storage and you create the project, all the forms that you have got inside that particular container will be pulled through here, and OCR will be run on that. And that's where the text has been automatically detected here. So what you need to do is create your tags and then you attach the values automatically to this tags. You have to do this across all the different like what I say the forms that you have. So now because I added a new tag called VAT ID, I need to go here and just select here, and I need to do repeat the same step for all my training forms here. And I'm just going ahead and doing it for the different elements. Cool. That's added. So let me quickly check. This one needs to be added again. Cool. So let me go ahead and look for, so all the tags, and I have now just made sure like the tags are actually well defined in my stuff here. Great. So once you have done this tagging process, so here you have defined the tags, you have just pointed out the values that you needs to be extracted and assigned it to the tags. The next thing is all about how do you go ahead and train. So I can go ahead now and retrain this model just to say based on the tags that I have provided. So now you can see like the model has been trained and also like it has provided me the training result. So here is my model ID and like the accuracy of my model as well as like the tags that are associated. The good thing about this is you can save this project and you can, as and when you identify, okay, I want to just identify more elements from my form, you can go ahead and add the new labels and you can just assign the values associated with those labels, and you can keep on retraining your model. Because the more data that you have, you more training you do with your forms that you have already got, then probably you will have get to see the better outcomes in your results. So the next thing what you need to do is predicting. So we have a model. Now we have tagged it and we have trained it. So now we can go ahead and search for a test document. So I'll just quickly go here and I have a sample document that I have got. So let me pick a invoice here and just say predicted. So now this is going to go ahead and predict the data based on what I have got uploaded as part of this form. So while this prediction process is running, so another thing I would show in the meantime is as part of the tagging. So previously when we used the unsupervised machine learning, my containers didn't have anything other than just the forms that I had. So this is my test forms and this is my training forms. So you don't have any other data. But if you notice the ones which I have used for my labeling process, you can see some set of additional JSON files that are available here. So what these JSON files are actually having is that they are having the OCR output as well as the labels that I have created. And if you remember, like when we used Postman in order to look at the demos, one of the attribute that I was mentioning is like, do you want to use a label file or not? So what you can do is now we were testing the forms using the labeling tool. So as you can see here, it extracted the output based on the form here. So what you can also do is you can invoke the same prediction based on this model using the REST APIs. So you can just create your labels through this tool. And what you can do is you can again invoke the REST API with a new set of containers where the label files on the label JSON files are available. And now what your REST API will be doing is it will be using the labels also as part of the deduction process, and it will be analyzing your forms and it is going to give you the output. So this is really classic because what you are getting to see here is how you can pretty much go ahead and start doing labeling, especially if you have got complex forms here. So simple forms, as I said, you can go down with the unsupervised machine learning option. But when it comes to complex forms, like sometimes labeling process is really good. And setting up this application is quite simple. As I said, the 3 steps that you need to follow is to have a Docker desktop installed on your machine. But if you're not interested in installing Docker locally, you can also use Azure to provision Docker over there, and you can just you run this tool out of the Azure portal also. So I'm just showing the simple example where I'm just running it locally. But if you don't want to run anything locally, put it on Azure, you can go ahead and do that also. Great. So where this is really handy, as I said, anyone in your business, they can sit down and start labeling some of their forms so that they can start looking at whether the right information are getting extracted and it is fed through to your downstream systems. Cool. So as you can see here, this is the labeling tool. Again, the labeling tool also is evolving. As you know, the Forms Recognizer service is still in preview mode. So just keep an eye on the labeling tool also, because as and when new features are getting added, you will be able to do some additional things also through this forms here. And you have the ability, again, if you want to save it, you can go ahead and save it or onto the cloud also. So you can open a local project or you can open a cloud project so that you can save your project settings there. Let me get back to my slides here. So getting back to the form labeling tool. So again, this is the tool that is really available and it's available on GitHub. So you can just go ahead and pull the tool and you can just use it. And the entire source code is available for you to use. So if you want to just customize the labeling tool for your needs, you can go ahead and feel free and customize it also. So that option is also available for you to use if you want to go down that path. And we saw the quick demo around how do we train your form recognizer models using the labeling tool. So here are some of the key references which I wanted to quickly point out. So the Forms Recognizer API, the REST API, as I said, this URL actually provides the link to all the different endpoints that are available. So what we saw here was around custom, what do you say, the custom one, rather than looking at the receipt model or the layout API model. So custom model basically supports both the options, which is supervised and unsupervised. That's the demo that we looked at. And so receipt model, as I said, it currently supports only the US receipts, like it automatically detects it properly. You can still try and put through some of the receipts locally that you have got in your country, which I tried to, as I mentioned. But like you may not get a better response because they specifically specified in the documentation that they support currently the US receipt formats only. And finally, the OCR form labeling tool. Again, this is the GitHub URL, what you're seeing, and you can go ahead and customize it if you really need to. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover as part of the Forms Recognizer demo that I wanted to do. So this service, I think this is going to be really handy, especially when it comes out of the preview and becomes GA, because a lot of opportunities for organization to automate their back office operations. And I think I'm quite excited because I may start looking at working with a lot of organizations here. How can we integrate this and automate their back office operations? And of course, thanks for providing me the opportunity and all to the global AI virtual tour organizers.
Thank you, Anu. That was great. And we loved having you. Uh, so what are some of the things that, was there anything that surprised you as far as functionality when you started working with the recognizer?
Yes, I think the version of the Forms Recognizer which I demoed today is V2, the version 2.
Mhm.
But in version 1, I didn't have a lot of I didn't have the labeling concept at all. So pretty much it was pretty much using the unsupervised machine learning
Mhm.
capability, and there is a lot of challenges and a lot of restrictions of okay, if you have a forms based PDF, you can't use Forms Recognizer. So for simple PDF it is okay, but as you know, like a lot of enterprises, they don't use simple PDFs. So
Mhm.
there is a lot of complexity. They may have nested tables in there. So as soon as it has got tables, or if you have like radio buttons, it wasn't supporting in V1, which is some of the limitations which they are now addressing as part of V2. And I think I'm more excited. I think the V2 is much more good, especially with the labeling tool. And also, it is integrated the latest version of the OCR capability. So the OCR functionality also that was available in cognitive service with V1 wasn't that efficient. And now they have
Mm.
embedded the V2 version of the OCR in the forms labeling tool also, which is adding a better like a outcome really. And
Okay.
yes, still there are some challenges in terms of like, okay, recognizing only US receipts and what about the other countries and so on. But I'm more excited from the labeling perspective, at least leaving the receipt part. Still a lot of like government organizations here, they use paper-based forms. And I'm looking at the opportunities there where it will be really handy for them to use it.
Okay. And so when looking forward, and I noticed that a lot of the text was typed or printed text.
That's right.
So is it in kind of the product path to look at handwritten text?
I think it does. Like for instance, like the OCR capability, as I mentioned, it is using the capability that came as part of the cognitive service stack, which
Mm-hmm.
can recognize both handwritten as well as the keyed in text.
Okay.
So this can also recognize the handwritten, but again, the accuracy is based on the OCR service itself.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
that's where I think the confidence level really will help because based on the confidence level, you can just decide on the workflow whether it needs to be reviewed or something. So, to give an example, like I have worked with organizations where they get flooded with a huge amount of forms and they still do data entry in the back office.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so even if you can reduce in terms of like, okay, instead of doing 100% data entry, like let us do like 75% of automatically we can detect or even 50%, that is going to just improve the value for the organizations because you can say like, okay, if the confidence level is greater than 80% or something, then probably just to put it through straight to the system, or otherwise like you can just create a queue for someone to review it. So yes, the accuracy is not perfect there, but I think even to like 25% to 50% of automation is giving going to give a lot of opportunities for these organizations, and especially to improve their customer service.
Yeah. I definitely see that as one of the large advantages of AI is, getting that 80% automated so that, workers can focus on, touching the 20% that needs that human touch, right? And
That's right.
EQ. So that's great. And
Thanks.
Sami,
And
did
that's
you have any
Yeah, I have a
questions?
technical question. Myself, I'm working on a small personal project with the labeling tool also, well, just a form recognizer. What I'm trying to build is some kind of IKEA receipt scanner. So you can
oh,
like figure out all the products that are on your receipt. So if you want to bring something back, for example, you can just figure out on which receipt it was. Um, so uh, can you open for me the labeling tool on your screen?
yes, can do that.
So if you go, yeah, so this part, so you have a tag. Is there any way to say, like now you have invoice number, let's say there's multiple invoice numbers. Okay, it's a bad example, that you can get like an array back instead of just a specific value.
Cool. I haven't tried that yet, but I can give a try and probably I'll blog it about that because I haven't tried with the same label entity as such, like okay, having multiple invoice numbers
Mm-hmm.
displayed there. And but I'm
Because it
just
will not
guessing it,
always
but I
be
have to give a
recognized as
try.
a table, your data. So,
That's right. What I'm guessing here, but I'm not sure, but I can test it and validate it. Probably it may also use the placement. And so if it is clever enough, like because that's what most of the OCR tools does is like it can recognize the placement of that label. So, but I can give a try and say duplicate, create an invoice with the multiple of the same invoice number labels and check that.
all right. Well, I think your session was very complete. I don't think there was any missing item of the form recognizer service. So thank you very much. Alicia, do you have any more questions? I don't.
Yeah, no, that was great.
I'll
And
ask for the URLs of of your last slides and the Q&A. That's done also at the moment. So yeah, I
Yes.
think that's we
And
can wrap up and thank everyone who was watching now or over the last, well, plus 30 hours of sessions. I think we we're all glad now that we can get some extra sleep, because it was exhausting for many of us. We're happy we had a good team behind the scenes, and a great amount of awesome talks and great speakers. I think we should also have like a big shout out for Hank, because he did a lot of work behind the scenes that, well, most of you didn't see, monitoring all the video feeds, audio feeds, making sure that everything goes smoothly. So that should, well, if it was for real, we would give him a big applause. So Hank, also thank you for your work.
Thanks to all the organizers.
So to finish up the day, we will just have a replay of the keynote, and after that the stream will end. So thank you all, and hope to see you soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, my name's Apanksha Malik, and I'm from Melbourne.
Excellent, Sami. It's Bal here.
Hi, I'm Alan Smith.
Hi, I'm Amy.
I'm Prasant from California.
大家好，我是卢建辉。
My Nederlands.
I'm Arafat Yassir from Australia.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Marsman from the United States.
Hi, I'm Arpita Gupta from India.
Hi, I'm Matthew Renton from the USA.
I'm Joe Spizak from California.
Hi, Midi Edi Daoud, Greece, Ghana.
Hi, I'm Anupama.
Merhaba, ben Türkiye'den Daron Yönden.
Hi there. Hi.
Hi.
Hello and welcome to the Global AI Virtual Community Tour. My name is Seth Juarez, and we're here with a special guest, Eric Board.
Eric Board. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Global AI Virtual Community Tour. I've got a special guest with me, Eric Boyd. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Seth. How are you?
Fantastic. So tell us what you do for Microsoft.
So I lead the Azure AI team. This is the team that internally builds all of our AI platform, our suite of cognitive services, and then we make those same services available to our third-party customers.
Fantastic. Well, we clearly are living in interesting times right now.
Unprecedented. I think all of us are figuring out how we can adapt and adjust. One of the, challenges is we all have to work from home. Of course, one of the benefits is I get to keep my social distance from you, Seth.
That's right. So and that's one of the minuses for me, pluses for you and everyone else. So thank you. So how is AI helping during this interesting time?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things we're all dealing with, we just sort of talked about, is this remote work and how, we're all in our homes and on conference calls and things like that. And so Microsoft Teams usage has just absolutely exploded, with everyone from schools to businesses figuring out how they can manage their work from home. One of the really cool features within Microsoft Teams is the ability to do a transcription of your call. And so that way, people later on who want us to go back and search through things that they may have heard, they can sort of follow up on it. They can do all of that, and that's built right into Teams. And that transcription service is built on the same Azure Cognitive Service that you can get. So Seth, if you want to go to the Cognitive Services page, you can see here, if you scroll down and get to the place where it shows all of our 4 major categories of speech, language, vision, decision. If you click on speech there, you can sort of drill into that category and get to the speech-to-text command. That's exactly the exact same thing that's being used within the suite of cognitive service, within Teams. And so really seen a lot of uptake in some of those remote work type scenarios. Another place that we're seeing a lot of traction is really companies looking at how they can use digitization to help them manage and control costs. And so, one of the things that we talked to a bunch of healthcare companies. Of course, they're completely overwhelmed. And one of the things that they're looking at is how they can use AI to really take some of the take some of the manual things that they've done and automate them. And so Form Recognizer, another one of our cognitive services, one that we've seen a lot of uptake from with hospitals and other customers like like that, really looking to figure out how can they take these things that, they had to have manual input and people doing work on it, and really just take the cost out of it. That's one of the things, particularly as the whole economy is going through this change, things that will really drive cost savings, we expect to be a big saver. Other things that we've done just really in this space, working with